Let's recable your 2016 Schiller water bike. Let's start by rotating the cam to one side. Take the barrel of the cable and insert into the cam. Rotate your cam and make sure the cable is seated in the groove. Thread the end of the cable into the barrel adjuster. Pull the housing back if you need to. Insert into the housing. And out the other side. Then through the barrel adjuster on top and pull the cable completely through. Let's run the other cable on the other side. Once again, rotate the cam to one side for access. Insert the barrel of the cable. Then take the end of the cable and insert into the barrel adjuster, pulling back the housing if necessary, and feeding it all the way through the housing. Then through the other barrel adjuster and pull all the cable forward. Let's go ahead and lock the cam by inserting a steel pin into the top of the cam. Rotate it to make sure the pin is fully seated in the outdrive. You can gently tap the pin in place and then make sure it's fixed. Make sure the cable is fully seated into the groove of the cam. And now we can route the cable through the bike. We're going to start with the lower pulley. You're going to want to remove your seat post and insert a flashlight into the seat tube. There may be one included in your master kit. Rotate the crank arm out of the way so you have good access. And go ahead and thread the cable under the bottom pulley out the front of the bike. Pull the cable all the way through. Okay, let's go to the other side of the bike and route the cable again under the lower pulley. Pull the cable all the way through the frame. Now let's route the cable under the top pulley. This is the path we're going to take. Start on top of the lower pulley and then look from the back of the bike down towards the lower pulley. You should be able to see the end of the cable. And pull the entire cable through. And finally, we'll route the cable over the top pulley and out the front of the bike. Pay special attention to keep the cable close to the top of the pulley to avoid obstacles inside the bike. Pull the cable all the way through and check the path. Once both cables are routed through the frame, Make sure the cables are not crossed and they sit right on top of the pulleys. The left cable in this video is incorrectly routed and crossed. We'll pull the cable back and reroute the cable to show you the correct routing. Because it was like that. Okay, so let me pull it back. I'll show you my correct routing. Both cables have been routed over the tops of the pulleys. The cables are not crossed, and we are now ready to tension. Before we tension the cables, let's make sure, once again, the cam is pinned and locked. The cables are fully seated in the grooves of the pulleys. You have a flashlight inserted into the seat tube to visualize the cables. The frame is protected, and the tensioning guide is installed. You can see from this side, the tension tool is being rotated all the way to the side of the frame. Then we'll begin tensioning. Now we need to lock the front of the steering on the bike. Take your 4mm T-handle and insert it through the head tube of the bike. If it does not insert, you're going to have to rotate your steerer so you can insert the 4mm T-handle. I recommend putting the tension tool on the bike, locking it so you can rotate the steerer. Gently insert the 4mm T-handle and rotate the steerer until you get access, and fully insert the T-handle. Now that the steering is locked with a 4mm T-handle, rotate your tension guide against the bike on the left side, facing the frame, making sure that there's a protective rag in between the tension tool and the bike. You can go ahead and lock down the tension tool with a 5mm wrench, and now we're ready to install the primary tension screws. These are the ones closest to the center of the bike. Install them halfway. And now we're ready to run the cables. Now that the left side cable is in the 4th groove, walk it across toward the tension guide and put it in the lower slot. Run your locking pliers to the face of the tension tool. Set the tension on your locking pliers so the cable will not slip. Now we're ready to begin setting the tension on the opposite side of the bike. Rotate the locking pliers until there is no slack in the cable, and you can pluck the cable at the rear of the bike and watch the tension build. You should not take an extreme amount of force, just a little bit of leverage. Then you can go ahead and slowly draw down your primary screw on the opposite side of the bike. I use an impact, but you can also use a quarter drive ratchet. Once again, make sure the cables are not crossed and are coming across the tops of the pulleys. So I'm going to make sure I start with the left side of the bike. So I'll grab the left cable facing the bike. My tension guide is on the left side of the bike. This cable is going to be run in the third groove starting from the top of the steerer. The first and second groove are reserved for the right side of the bike. The third and fourth groove are for the left side of the bike. You're going to start in the third groove, route your cable across the front of the steerer and around your primary screw. You want that about halfway in the steerer. And then you want to put a slight bend in the cable. So go ahead and pull that cable up so it has a bit of memory. And now you're ready to route to the opposite side in tension. Trim the excess cable with a side cutters. Leave enough cable to reach the center of the secondary screw. The purpose of the secondary screw is to cover the end of the cable. Now there are no sharp ends exposed. Now we're going to tension the left side cable. So go ahead and swing the tension tool to the opposite side of the bike. We're going to start this cable in the number 2 groove and finish in the top groove, groove number 1. So go ahead and route that cable around the head of the primary screw in the opposite side, putting a bend in the cable so the cable will fall into the top groove. Grab your locking pliers and run this cable into the slot that's parallel to the groove. Set your locking pliers and once again rotate the locking pliers up. Watch your cable move in grooves 1 and 2. Make sure slack is diminished in the cable. It should pluck like a guitar string, but only apply a small amount of leverage with the locking pliers. Now we can go ahead and fix the primary screw on the opposite side of the bike. If you don't have an impact, use a quarter drive ratchet and have a helper hold the locking pliers while you use the ratchet. Hold that, thank you. I've got a quarter drive ratchet with a T25 Torx, and I'm going to slowly draw down as I maintain tension with the locking pliers. Until the bolt's fully seated, and then check at the rear of the bike that the tension matches on each side. Now we can go ahead and trim the cable. And install the secondary screw to cover the sharp ends of the cable. Be careful with the ends of the cable as they're sharp, and make sure the head of the secondary screw traps all of those sharp edges. Now that the tension is set, let's remove all of our tools and locks. So first remove your 4mm T-handle carefully. You can remove your tension tool. We don't need to protect the frame anymore. We can remove the lock pin on the cam. I use the locking pliers for a little bit more leverage. You can wiggle it and pull. And now we can test left and right to make sure the bike works properly. So take your out drive, insert into the cam, turning the propeller as needed so it fully engages. Insert the lock pin completely. I allow the out drive to go all the way down. And you can use your handlebars or your tension tool inverted on top of the steerer with a 5mm to check your left and right. You want to make sure that as you turn to each side, the outdrive tracks with it. So if I'm turning left, the outdrive moves left. If I turn right, outdrive moves right. Now let's make sure the cables are tensioned correctly. First, grab the cables between your thumb and index finger and attempt to pinch the cables. You should not be able to make the cables touch. This is a minimum amount of tension. And then we want to make sure the tension is equal from cable to cable. If one side is looser than the other, you can use a 9mm open-end wrench supplied in your master kit to turn the barrel adjusters counterclockwise. Once again, compare the tension on each cable and then make sure both cables do not touch. Now you're ready to ride.